We're in Houston, Texas.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
About to venture into one of the most notorious areas for child sex trafficking in the United States.
My daughter has a price tag on her. A child.
It's quite early and we've already heard gunshots. 7 to 8 rounds of gunshots.
We meet those who've survived this nightmare.
I was like, oh my God, like I was trafficked.
The pimps who've profited from selling women.
You were getting a cut of the money?
All the money.
All the money.
And those risking their lives to recover young girls from the grip of exploitation.
You see it firsthand, you know? She's just a baby.
Houston on a Thursday night. We're in a parking lot where a private security team is assembling.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. Wow, this is a team.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to accompany a group doing outreach work speaking to trafficked girls. One of them is Robin Corey, whose daughter Kristen was trafficked and remains missing today. Private investigator Betty Simons has been helping her on her search.
And you always go out rolling this deep?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, we're in Houston.
Betty has recovered 45 underage girls from sex trafficking. It's dangerous work.
What should we expect out there?
You just don't know what's going to happen. They're stepping into their territory, you know, so we all are taking a risk by being out here. But it's what we do, right?
From cars, the security team will monitor Robin and the group doing outreach. Most are ex-army turned professional bounty hunters who make their money catching fugitives and do this child recovery work pro bono.
So what's that gun?
It's AR-15.
Is that an AR-15 as well?
It is.
Why'd you choose an AR-15?
Holds a lot of rounds.
Okay. So if the traffickers do start shooting, what will you guys do? What's the plan?
We're going to take cover, call 911, and defend our position.
As in shoot back?
Absolutely.
To see these guys kitting up, carrying this much protection, bulletproof vests, arms, just to go out to Bissonnette Street, it really just makes you think how vulnerable these women and underage girls are right now.
We set off for Bissonnette Street, a hot spot for sexual exploitation. As we approach, we see a row of cars stopping to pick up girls. Many of them look well under the age of consent.
You could see 2, 3, 4, 5 girls.
In recent years, at least 80,000 children and young people have been forced into sex trafficking in Texas. The average age a girl begins being sold is just 15. Houston has more cases than any other city in the whole of the United States. Bissonnette Street is ground zero.
My daughter has a price tag on her. A child.
Robin's daughter Kristen was just 15 when she was being sold on this street.
I was just simply going up there to look for my daughter, but soon realized we had a problem.
Houston, like all major cities, has sex workers who are working for themselves. But that's not what Bissonnette Street is known for. This is where vulnerable girls are forced into prostitution, as their sex traffickers, more commonly known as pimps, circle the block.
Can you imagine a 15-year-old being a prostitute? They can't consent.
We decide to film from the car while I join Robin and the outreach team to gauge the temperature.
You need condoms, booty wipes, Red Bull? Red Bull?
The atmosphere tonight is tense.
It's quite early and we've already heard gunshots. 7 to 8 rounds of gunshots. We asked the girls if they were okay and they said they turned the corner after they heard.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome.
Always out here.
Y'all be safe.
two of the girls came over and sat down for a bit, and one of them told us that one of the girls got slapped. It's shocking. It's worse than I could have even imagined. It's this constant rotation of girls. A lot of them look really young. Some of them look 15, 16 at a push.
We start to draw attention after talking to the girls, so we leave and catch up with Betty in a nearby diner.
How was it tonight?
It was normal for me. You saw for yourself how many young girls are out there. These are children that are out there. These are trafficking victims that are being abused. You saw them crying. So this isn't a happy place. It's a very dark place. Our work is never done. When you get one trafficker locked up, it's replaced by 5 more. When you get one child off the street, all they're doing is looking for another one to replace that income source.
For Betty, this is personal. Her sister was sex trafficked at 14 and then years later murdered.
For me, it keeps my sister alive. So as we continue to do the work and as we continue the fight, for me it's keeping a piece of her alive. So that even though she's not here, like they couldn't kill her. They couldn't take her away.
Sex trafficking, illegally transporting people from one area to another for the purpose of sexual exploitation, is a form of modern-day slavery. While inherently violent, not all methods are the same. At a cafe which raises funds for survivors of sex trafficking, I meet with Kathy and Dominique, who were both exploited at a young age. They are now mentors for girls who've been similarly entrapped.
It first starts with, befriending someone, right? I'm your friend and, trust me. And then the next phase after that is alienation.
Kathy's trafficker was a man she thought was her boyfriend. He used a tactic known as the Romeo method.
For years, I just called it an abusive relationship. I hid and silenced the whole prostitution part because I was so ashamed. I took all of the blame. How could I let him talk me into doing that? I didn't understand what trafficking was until I finally, started embracing what had happened to me, this bad relationship. That's when I really figured out what trafficking was. I was like, oh my God, I was trafficked. This is crazy. There's a name to it.
A 17-year-old Dominique was abducted by what is known as a gorilla pimp. After accepting a job in a strip club to support her young son, he wouldn't let her leave.
And he says, I'm going to tell you like this, if you try to leave, you will be killed before you reach Atlantic City. You will never see your son again, and I will spread your body parts everywhere. Just listen to what I have to say, and he began to give me the code. And
What do you mean by the code? Is that something that's common?
Yes, it's like the street code, where he begins to tell me what I am required to do from now on. That my personal identity is no longer me. That's no longer exists. Like, you're a hoe now, and you belong to me, and I'm 17 years old, and I'm really losing my mind. And that's what he wanted. That's what he wanted, control over me.
Power and control are the currency of this economy, but breaking free is possible.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Betty takes us to meet one of the girls she's helped recover. Cam is now 19, but was trafficked when she was much younger.
How old were you the first time you went to Bissonnette Street and worked on Bissonnette Street?
14.
What was the first time like?
It was scary because it was the first time, but I wasn't by myself. I had other girls to tell me what to do. So.
What were the ages of the other girls?
Some were around my age and some were older.
Okay, so there were other 14-year-olds?
Yeah.
Cam managed to get away, but a few years later, after having issues with her family, she was once again being sold for sex, and in the clutches of a violent man.
After he choked me out and stuff, I tried to leave, but it was it started getting physical to the point he was like, if you leave, I'll kill you. Then he always had guns on him, so I was scared. So it was I was too scared and too afraid to even try to leave. So yeah.
And he tried to choke you out.
Well, he did. It wasn't trying.
Cam is now free from her trafficker, who's in prison facing multiple charges. She's expecting a child from a new relationship.
When I found out I was having a daughter, I cried because it was like everything I've been through. I was like, I hope I want my daughter to never go through that. So it was like with my daughter, I feel like I'll be way overprotective because the stuff that I've been through.
So who are the traffickers? We've secured rare access to a man who is part of that world. Recently released from prison in North Texas, Edhem was initially indicted on child sex trafficking charges, which were dropped, and later convicted of advertising women online.
What were their ages usually?
They're usually gonna be young, but not 16 or nothing like that. Well, for me, maybe like 20, 21. You know, you want them relatively like, you know, you want what the customers want.
So you're working with girls, they were going out, they were getting paid for sex from buyers, and then you were getting a cut of the money?
All the money.
All the money. So what did they get out of it?
I mean, they got wherever they wanted. Like, if they wanted their nails done, they got their nails done. If they wanted to send money to their family, then that happened too, you know what I'm saying?
But she has to go through you to get that.
Right, yeah.
And do you think that that's okay?
I mean, she might be a bad money handler. She might make $1,000 a day, but all off, you know what I'm saying?
Edhem has served 5 years in jail for his involvement in the trade, but his lack of remorse is staggering.
For me, pimp stands for a player into making progress. So like whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to progress and get what I need. I'm gonna pimp this situation. I'm gonna work it to my favor. You get what I'm saying? So you can pimp. Anybody can be a pimp, you know what I'm saying?
So
Women can be a pimp.
So then how do you feel when the word sex trafficker is used?
I hate that word traffic. It's just, I don't know, ever since the first time I read it on a paper, it just seems so like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I don't like that word. This is the oldest profession that's been going around. Prostitution's been going around since the early days, you know what I'm saying? So.
But there's a difference, right, between sex workers who work for themselves and are making a choice, and women and girls who are being exploited by
and you're right about
men,
that. Yeah.
Groups of men who are taking their money when they do perform those acts. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, it's two different sides. Yeah, it's like two different ends. You know what I'm saying? But no, I totally agree with you. Like that's not sex working. You know what I'm saying? Like that's trafficking. That's, you know, all that other stuff. Like that's a whole nother ball game.
How do young girls end up in the grip of traffickers? Back in Houston, we meet up again with Robin at her daughter Kristen's favorite pizza place. She tells us how Kristen's behavior slowly began to change.
Well, Kristen turned 15. You know, she had her good friends and, you know, friends we knew. She started hanging around with some new people. And that's when she began the runaway thing. I thought it was just typical teenage behavior. But then she just started acting different. So it was like a process.
Robin didn't realize that Kristen was being actively groomed. She ran away, and that's when Houston police picked her up on Bissonnette Street.
The detectives were talking with us, and clearly she had been sex trafficked. And so I needed to get her away from Houston.
Robin arranged for Kristen to stay at her grandmother's house without her phone.
And we're kind of making some headway in family counseling, trauma counseling, psychiatrist appointments. And so we thought maybe, okay, it's time to have a phone.
What happened?
She was gone within the next 2 days.
Until Kristen is found, her case will remain open.
It's been over 2 years since Kristen went missing for a second time. The FBI is now investigating the case, but Betty is still working on it.
There's never going to be a time that we don't look for Kristen or that we stop, because there's still a chance. And there will always be a chance until we find her.
How long is it usually before you start to be concerned that the girls have been killed?
In a 90-day span, I start to worry. Because these children are products, right? They're selling them to make money. And so therefore they have to advertise them. And so if the child is not being advertised or sold, then you can't help but start to wonder what happened to them.
Oh, she looks like a kid.
Yeah. She very likely is a kid.
Kristen is only one of the trafficked girls Betty is looking for. In trying to find them, she cross-references ads on escort websites with the National Index for Missing Children.
She looks like her. A little bit.
This one?
Yeah.
She really does, actually. So what we're looking for here is you see the marks. She has some birthmarks on her. Jesus Christ. See?
She's currently looking for a 15-year-old who keeps running back to her trafficker.
She probably believes this is her boyfriend and that he loves her. This is a child that has grown up in the system, and so that's probably the only love, it's false love, but the only love that she's known.
The whole sordid industry does not work without the men who pay for sex, the buyers. To tackle sex trafficking, Texas has become the first state in the US to make buying sex a felony, punishable by at least 6 months in jail.
When we work with buyers, we try to lead with some vulnerability and empathy on how they ended up there, but accountability is never optional. You've got to own it.
Joe Madison works to rehabilitate buyers through his nonprofit, Demand Disruption.
There is no more direct way to fight human trafficking than to stop demand, because you stop one buyer, you stop at least one purchase, but usually upwards of 5 to 6 to 7.
He's taking us to meet one who is part of his program and has agreed to be interviewed on the condition of anonymity.
How frequently were you buying sex at the time?
Like about twice a week.
And how would you usually meet up with them?
Usually it was online. Every once in a while there was a woman that I saw walking down the street, but the quality wasn't as nice as the women online.
Are you aware that there are a lot of underage girls online?
Yes. Yes, and I always try to avoid that.
What would you do to avoid that?
Ask their age.
Would they present evidence of their age?
Certain times they did. But I tried to find women that looked older.
How did it make you feel to know that a lot of these women and underage girls are brutalized on a daily basis?
It made me feel bad that I was one of the contributors to that. I asked the Lord for forgiveness, but I'm gonna have to answer to that on Judgment Day.
Whether the buyers always know it or not, the fact is that a lot of the girls for sale are underage, and a majority of them have contact with social services. But even facilities set up to protect them can't always keep them off the streets. Since 2018, 573 suspected child sex trafficking victims have received services from this state-run center.
Staff has to have a key card to get in so the kids are protected.
And some of them have walked out of the doors and straight into the hands of their traffickers.
Most of the time, the traffickers have talked to them about a plan in case you come in, contact with the authorities, and if you run away, this is how you contact me.
Is there anything you can do here to stop kids from being re-trafficked?
Well, we can't stop them from running away. There are facilities where a child may go, like a jail or a psychiatric hospital, where they can't run from there. But it's only a temporary solution. And we don't want to lock kids up who are victims. It's like the way we used to think about domestic violence. Why doesn't she leave him? He's beating her. Well, a lot of these kids are in a domestic violence situation with their trafficker.
One of those who's run away from this facility and back to her trafficker is the 15-year-old that Betty is looking for. She can't find any ads of the girl online, so she's reverting to some tried and tested investigative methods.
There's a black case. Do you mind handing it to me? Sometimes you gotta bring out the trusty binoculars. Because if she comes here, I'll be able to see her, for sure.
We drive down the track with Betty, hoping to spot her.
There's a girl here on the right as well.
I don't know. That one right there looked a lot like her.
Yeah.
Betty calls a colleague to alert them.
Okay, I think she's on Bissonnet right now. But her hair's not blonde now, it's dark.
We circle back, but in a flash,
she's gone.
Yeah, she's picked up. These are the buyers that are saying, oh no, I go for the older girls. That was a 15-year-old. But it's tough, because you see it firsthand, She's just a baby.
just the thought of her, just seeing how young she looks, being with a man who is buying sex, soliciting her, is just really upsetting.
Hey, she got picked up, so I gotta wait for her to come back. What? Really?
Betty hears news that will complicate her efforts to recover the girl.
All right, bye. So she's picked up robbery charges. 15.
So she's now being criminalized.
And now she's going to be criminalized, which is nothing new. We see this, unfortunately, all the time. So now it's like a catch-22. You're going to have her picked up. She's going to go to jail. When she's a victim.
If Betty sees her again, then she'll be obliged to call law enforcement. The Houston Police Department has a dedicated human trafficking unit headed up by Sergeant Antonio Gracia.
What are the dangers of victims being criminalized during the recovery process for charges that are outstanding?
It depends. Is it a violation of public safety? Because you do have victims sometimes out there robbing people too, as well, with guns and everything. Even though you might have duress, it's still a violent crime. And stuff like that. But there are some issues that if during our operations, if we recover somebody and they're a confirmed victim, usually they're going to not get charges, especially if they're under 18.
So this was a case of a 15-year-old African-American girl. She had been picked up, recovered before, and then she was back out with her trafficker. Mm-hmm. And she's facing robbery charges, and there's an arrest warrant out for her. Mm-hmm. I mean, with a case like that, how do you protect the trust, protect the recovery process?
Okay, but let me ask a question for you. Where was she safer at? At home again, where she could run away again? Or, I hate to say it, but sometimes they got to be, locked up for their own safety, so hopefully get them to stabilize.
We hear from Betty that the 15-year-old has been picked up in Dallas and is now in juvenile detention, safe in the eyes of law enforcement. But the challenge now is to break the cycle of exploitation that keeps her tied to her trafficker. The challenge for Robin remains the same: finding her daughter.
It's 2.5 years looking for your daughter. How are you coping with the stress?
I've got to be strong for my other 2 kids, and I've got to show them strength and hope, because my son thinks she's the D word.
The D word. He thinks she's died.
Yes.
And has that possibility of her not being alive, has that crossed your mind?
Of course. Of course. I mean, what hasn't crossed my mind? My daughter's being raped and sold. How much more worse could it get?
I'm so sorry.
I promised her I wouldn't let anything happen to her. So in keeping my promise to her, I gotta continue my search.